we want to take a minute to thank our newest sponsor on the show, 482 Designs. That is FOUR, the numbers 82 Designs, 482 Designs. You can find them on Facebook by looking up FOUR 82 Designs, at FOUR 82 Designs on Instagram. And if you want to email them, go to FOUR82designs@gmail.com. Pretty soon, we're going to be rolling out some high-quality t-shirts and stickers that were just done by the sponsor. Please check them out for any of your screen printing needs.
First off, it's a light years better than our first run. Also, it survived the washer and dryer. They look good, and they're good quality.
Nice. And those stickers before Paco chewed them up were amazing. And luckily, we'll be getting some more in, hopefully, before we start selling them to fans. But that's FOUR 82 Designs.
Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
Welcome back for another week of the Working Fans Podcast. This is AJ. I'm the former wrestler. We've got Dave, the ultimate fan, here with us. As we do every week, our producer Joe likes to make us sound good and makes us look way more professional than we actually are. As always, you can find us on Twitter, that's @FansWorking, Facebook, Working Fans Pod. We've got email where you can reach out to us and please contact us to let us know what you think of the podcast and for any ideas that you might have. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram where you can keep up with us at workingfanswrestling_pod. And then you can now listen to us on all major platforms, including Anchor.fm. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts, and you can actually check us out on YouTube. Now, it's important when you go onto the Apple Podcasts and YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating, let us know what you think so you can help us out and we can continue to do what we love and bring you guys in as fans.
All right, everybody, it's the Working Fans Podcast with AJ Strangebrew and the man they call Dave. And today we're back with AJ versus Dave. And I got a good one for you, AJ.
Oh, my.
Your favorites, the lightweights. Who is the better junior heavyweight of all time? Rey Mysterio or Jushin Thunder Liger?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll let you just kick off. I mean, I got some feedback from some people we'll probably include in here, but let's hear what you got to say. It's a tough one.
All right, so both of these guys, revolutionary in their styles. Both of them, obviously, great runs. But I like Jushin Liger better.
Yeah, I know you do.
I know that's a big surprise.
Not a big surprise to me. I know you very well.
Jushin Liger, both of them, first of all, extremely long careers.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, I believe, is heading towards the 26-year mark, maybe longer. Liger, I believe, started in the late 80s. So I know he recently retired, but you're talking about over a 30-year career. To me, Liger was the benchmark. He was the person who made lightweight wrestling interesting again. His matches that he had with Brad Armstrong, Brian Pillman, Tom Zink early on in the light heavyweight division in WCW, and then he continued to evolve through the years. I mean, I have a soft spot for him. He basically was a cartoon character come to life. And I think a lot of what Rey Mysterio, even though he came from Mexico, did with pattern some of the cartoon, because he used the marble, the cartoon characters in his gear.
Superhero.
I think if you were to ask him who some of his role models were, I'm pretty sure Liger would probably be on that list because he did have a similar style. I think that Rey Mysterio, because he's been on WWE TV, reached probably a farther audience.
Sure.
To be honest with you, Liger is literally considered as a god in Japan, and anytime he came to the States and did anything, it was a special occasion. What's your take, Dave?
Okay, so I'm leaning towards Mysterio, but let me give you some background first. First off, before I say Rey's a legend in Mexico, to come on what you're saying too about Liger being a god in Japan, They have cartoons of him and some other wrestlers too. They have comic books, but Liger is one of those guys that he is just like, I don't want to say Hogan-like over there, but he is very big in Japan, an absolute megastar. I would even say that Liger's popularity in Japan, I'm guessing, probably rivals Mysterio's popularity in Mexico. But not by, I'm saying, like, Ray's super popular in Mexico, but that's how popular Liger is in Japan.
Yeah, I think he's probably second only right now. If I had to guess, probably second only to Inoki. I mean, obviously, Buddha's in that conversation.
Yeah.
You have that. For the legendary status, I think Liger's probably second only to Inoki, maybe Baba.
Mysterio would probably, I mean, I'm thinking of famous wrestlers in Mexico. You got a few, though. Del Santo, Paraguayo. Even Conan's probably on that list.
Conan is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. You got to remember, he at one time was a soap opera star and a wrestler at the same time.
Yeah.
In Mexico.
I would say...
But by no means a light heavyweight.
No. I would say the thing with Ray is, though, is that he was probably a decent star in Japan, probably the equivalent to what Liger was in Mexico. We'll call that a wash. But you're right. Ultimately, he had the bigger platform, but not just in WWE. They were both in WCW, but I feel like that Mysterio shined a little more in WCW. He was obviously on there more. Yeah, he didn't have the run, like you said, the early runs with Pillman and those guys, but his match with Malenko and even getting thrown like a lawn dart. These are all memorable things now, and he
even
just
his ECW run, his ECW where he started in the United States when he first came over.
Yes,
absolutely tremendous run. And to be honest with you, if you want to see great matches, it's obviously a far different Rey Mysterio through ECW and WCW, where he was much younger. People forget how young he was. What was he, 14 when he started, something like that?
Yeah,
and his body, you can see the mega difference between Rey Mysterio early 2000s WWE and Rey Mysterio when he looked like he was maybe 110 pounds in ECW.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about, like, Ray, too, is a lot. I mean, obviously the big difference is he did have the WWE platform, and he won the world title, which is unheard of, really, a guy his size winning the world title.
We need to talk about that world
title. Yeah, I know he didn't. Yeah. Well, actually, he held the world title a couple times, even though one of them was a shorter reign. And I know the reign you want to talk about is that very first one he did.
Do you think the first one happens if Eddie Guerrero doesn't pass away?
Maybe not, but I mean, boy, they didn't do him any favors, even with the booking. It was like the world champion lost almost all the matches, it felt like, at that point.
But that's what I'm saying, is that it's not like they were trying to get him over afterwards or booking him strong as the world's champion. They literally, I think, hey, we want to reach out to this portion of the crowd who's upset that Eddie Guerrero just passed away. How can we make them happy? Let's put the belt on Rey Mysterio.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. There's still something there. Vince wouldn't just do that anyway. You know what I mean? Like
no. And I'm not saying he's not a draw. I'm not saying...
Yeah. Well,
his believability is just not that of a world's champion.
See, now that's what's interesting is this is where I think a little bit of the biasness comes in here. Because that's been your problem, Ray, for years.
I wouldn't have put the world title on Liger either.
No, I know you wouldn't. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's just funny because that's one of the things I've heard from a lot of wrestlers, I want to say like Edge, Batista, and everybody have talked about is that Ray, even despite his size, because of the stories he tells in the ring, actually becomes believable. I think you would disagree with that still because you've always saw him as a small child and you don't like short people.
No, for me, in order for Rey Mysterio to be believable in the ring, they basically had to turn it into a Three Stooges movie of accidents where the person eventually trips, falls on the ropes, and gets kicked in the face.
Now, to be fair, too, for the audience who doesn't know, AJ would have the same believability problem with Liger if Liger was beating bigger men all the time. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If you put Liger in there with the Big Show and are trying to convince me that he's going to beat the Big Show, I'm sorry, it's going to be hard.
Now,
even when Rey Mysterio was wrestling against an Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle, how the hell am I supposed to believe that?
Much like last week, so we reached out to the people. And obviously, like we do every week, this one was not really close, but everybody pretty much went with Mysterio. However, this was a lot more, much more. People didn't want to pick between these two. Now, there was one guy who picked Liger, and he was our star of the show last week, Mr. Scott from Pollentown. And I'm going to include a little bit of his stuff. He went so long, I'm not going to include everything. But he did pick Liger, and I just want to include the first part of this. This is how people feel about Liger and Ray. I just want to start by saying that I still hate you for making me choose between these all-time greats. But I'll give you the short version. This was not a short version. He went with Liger because he said that the man's in-ring could started when I could barely old enough to know what Thunder was. He created a shooting star press, even though Brock Lesnar perfected the move by landing directly on top of his head for maximum damage. I never saw Liger pull that one off. He evolved from being an innovative high flyer into a more well-rounded grappler and storyteller. And we forgot to mention this, after he had a brain tumor surgery. Yeah, and Scott also lets us know, he said, you know what I would do after having brain tumor removed? Probably not continue to work a sport where I might take shots in the head. Maybe it was best he didn't try that Brock Lesnar shooting star press. He also even had the balls to step in as a replacement to fight Minoru Suzuki in a legit shoot fight, Pancras. And he said it didn't go well for him, but I don't think I'd be crazy enough to fight Minoru Suzuki on life support. So
I'd love to see Rey Mysterio do that.
I don't think Ray's going to do that either. I mean, it's funny though. I've heard that Ray's not afraid to throw down with people if he had to. He's not crazy like Eddie was. Apparently, Eddie would throw down with anybody, including Kurt Angle at one point over something. And they're like, Eddie, why did you try to take Kurt Angle down? He's an Olympic wrestler. And he's like, I was pissed.
Like I said, obviously we have respect for both of them. I agree with Scott. It's great to actually have a voice of reason in this sea of mediocrity.
At the end, most of us just felt that Ray ended up transcending what a cruiserweight was. That he ended up being the face of the cruiserweight and the light heavyweight still.
He did, but this debate was who was the better light heavyweight wrestler.
I guess depends how you define great. I should have been a little more specific. I see what you're doing here. All right. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, look, I'll put Ray and Liger skills right up on each other all the time. Both great high flyers, technical wrestlers. Yeah. Both can get it done on the mat. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day,
Dave, at the end of the day, I agree with you.
Ray was the biggest star. Yeah.
1A and 1B. No matter which one you pick in this discussion, if you're talking about great light heavyweights of all time, I mean, we can have a discussion as to who transcended it. The original light heavyweight for me who transcended wrestling is
Danny Hod.
The Dynamite Kid. The Dynamite Kid talking about assholes.
That's from a prior episode.
You had Tiger Mask, then obviously you had Eddie and Benoit before Benoit got juiced to the gills, where they wrestled as the Pegasus Kid and as, what was it, Black Cat? Is that what Eddie Guerrero wrestled as?
Yes.
And then so obviously it transcended through the years, but when you talk about light heavyweights and you talk about the two greatest of all time, and you're not talking about Brad Armstrong, then you gotta talk about...
No one talks about Brad Armstrong. They should. He's great. He's great. He is great.
And when you listen to any wrestler from that time period talk about who the great wrestlers are, almost everybody mentions Brad Armstrong.
Sure, Iron Anderson does.
However, when you talk about Liger and you talk about Rey Mysterio, my preference obviously is Liger. Scott's preference is Liger. The rest of you ninnies picked Rey Mysterio. But it's 1A and 1B, and you can't lose with either one.
All right, everybody. That's going to be it for the Working Fans podcast. We're out. Hold on a second.
Hello, this is Dominic, the Bone Collector, and you guys are listening to the Working Fans podcast.
All right, everybody, it's the Working Fans podcast with the man they call Dave. And today we got a guy who's been successful at a couple things. He is a BJJ purple belt. He's been in the Pan Am Games, and he was also trained by Johnny Wrestling. And he's part of MLW's Team Filthy right now. The one, the only, Dominic Garrini. Dominic, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Yourself, good?
Oh, not doing bad, sir. Not doing bad. Thank you. You know, I was curious. You know, usually we kind of start off like the beginning with wrestling, but you had such an extensive BJJ background. How did you get into BJJ?
So, jiu-jitsu is something I got into. I wrestled 2 years in high school. I was not a good wrestler in high school. I was pretty bad. Win-loss record, not very good. But I decided to stick around my old high school and help coach. My coach, Brian Bell, was a former Olympian, and he had a lot of good connections for us. And I got to hang out with Henry Sickenbill before for the UFC fights, who is now retired, but he was the double champion in the UFC at 125 and 165 pounds. And besides coaching, I really wasn't doing much because I was going to college at the time. So I've been thinking about doing BJJ, and I for whatever reason, it got brought up when I was talking to Henry, and he kind of encouraged me to do it. So from there, I decided to kind of jump in the BJJ head on. When I first did it, it was mainly to fight MMA. But about, I would say, a year in, I found competitive jiu-jitsu tournaments and whatnot, and it kind of shifted my focus from wanting to be an MMA fighter into going to be a jiu-jitsu world champion for the most part. And that was kind of like my start in jiu-jitsu at that point.
Henry Cejudo, that's an interesting name. Yeah, he's you gave all the credentials right there for the people who don't know. 2 weight class champion, UFC, gold medalist Olympian. Do you think he could make the transition to pro wrestling? Do you think that's on his radar at all?
I do think it's on his radar because he actually had a WWE tryout before he decided to go into MMA. He was the guy that WWE kind of had really courted, and there's always this rumor that Vince McMahon was one of his Mighty Mouse character for like 40 years, and one of the guys that they had really thought to peg a guy like that character was Cejudo. So I think that, you see him on AEW, and currently he is retired from the UFC, so I think he's a guy that has been so successful at everything he does that more than anything, I think Cejudo, once he gets so successful, just gets bored with it. So I think he's bored with MMA at this point, so I could definitely see him trying to come pro wrestling back.
Now, you make the transition from BJJ to pro wrestling. I see that Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae helped train you. How did that go? Were there other people involved? What was your training like for the pro wrestling side?
So when I decided to make the transition over from BJJ to pro wrestling, I kind of learned through my time in jiu-jitsu to take your time, to really find what you feel is the best and train for those people. I, searched schools in my area, and really it came down to a no-brainer to go train with Johnny and Candice, and also train with Absolute Intense Wrestling, who's probably the top independent wrestling promotion in Ohio. So, Johnny has a background and speaks for herself, and so does Candice. So from there, I started training, and then, I ended up meeting AEW promoters, Chris Ryan, a.k.a. Chandler Biggins, and John Thorne. And those would be the other 2 guys that were really essential in my training. Like, Johnny and Candice definitely did everything in rings, but, John and Chandler really, do such a great job of teaching me and the other kids, the business side of pro wrestling, finding bookings, getting yourself booked, how to really play yourself to promotion, character work, all that stuff. They were so key and essential in that. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention them. And then throughout my journey, I've kind of got many people I consider like secondary trainers or people who really helped me out a lot. Hot Sauce Tracy Williams is a guy that helped me out immensely. We kind of bonded right off the rip when I met him at AIW, and he kind of took me under his wing. And we had a number of matches, and he's always a guy that I've looked to for advice. And then over the last, year and a half, Eric Stevens has been a very big help to me. And, it's full circle, and now we're teammates in MLW. But, Eric was a guy that I watched growing up in Ring of Honor. So for him to come back last year and us to create the relationship we did, it's been really awesome.
Now, my producer Joe was telling me, he really liked the way, and it's not a shot at Evolve, but he really liked the way you were brought out in MLW. And I was thinking about this before I asked you about this. I want to ask you, Court seems to really, at least as a fan, it seems like he really loves the MMA and combat sports as well. Do you think the way Court presents you, given the fact that, it seems like he's a fan of that stuff, that he's able to present you and have a better mindset about your character and who you are?
A little bit. Gabe Polsky, who got me into Evolve when I was in Evolve, obviously I had a much different bringing to Evolve as, the Stokely Hathaway bodyguard character, and then kind of transitioning this fighter type character. I would never say anything bad about Gabe, because Gabe's, been doing promoting now for 20 plus years, ECW, Ring of Honor, Evolve, Dragon Meet USA, all the great stuff that he's done. And, he's for the most part, Gabe is really a big revolutionary force in the grappling aspect of American independent wrestling, pushing guys like Davey Richards, pushing guys like Kyle O'Reilly, really pushing that early Evolve style, too. So I don't know if it was just that Gabe didn't necessarily get what he wanted out of me, but also I think at the time, with Matt Riddle coming on so strong and Evolve, it was probably rough to try to present almost 2 similar characters if they weren't in a team together per se. Whereas when I came in MLW, I got the chance to work with not only Court, who's a massive, martial arts fan and mixed martial arts fan for that matter. Court and I, we have a lot of sidebars just about MMA history and stuff. Yeah. And he's actually I think he said his neighbors at Campbell McLaren who started the initial UFC. So, Court's always had a really big thing for mixed martial arts. So he can definitely see kind of all the areas of it. And, he sees me as that jiu-jitsu player. And, he brought up the fact of wearing the gi to me. And I'm 50, I love the idea of promoting jiu-jitsu out there. It makes some stuff difficult for me, but, I mean, I'm more than willing to do whatever the company wants me to do. But also, the gi does give me a different presentation to everybody else. And we'll see, because at some point, the gi will have to go, but, we're definitely not at that point yet. So, but overall, Court, I think, has such a good real handle on the distinct fighting styles that we're trying to push in MLW. And I think that also not only goes to Court, but it also goes a lot to Will Key, who helps out from behind the scenes. And, Will Key's very interactive in the terms of, really wanting to settle out all these fighting styles that are in MLW. As well as George Carroll, who is a backstage guy at MLW, who, was at New Japan for a number of years. Won for a number of years, and really is kind of the driving force behind Red Dragon. Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish, he's been a massive help to me as well.
That's really cool. A lot of people in my friend group were big MMA and pro wrestling fans. In fact, one of the guys, Scott, he was telling me, and for fans who don't know this, after Mighty Mouse pulled off the mousetrap against Ray Borg, which is like a suplex into an armbar, essentially. When they're coming down, you pull them in the armbar. He saw you do that on an independent show. And I was curious, do you get ideas sometimes like you see things, whether it's MMA, jiu-jitsu, and go, okay, I want to try to incorporate that in my game? Obviously, you are doing that, but are you still on the lookout for stuff like that sometimes?
Yeah, I'm 100% always on the lookout for stuff like that. Obviously, I call it the Mighty Mouse, as like an homage to Demetrius Johnson. But when I came up with that and I debuted that move, that was really from Gabe asking me for a kind of a new finish, kind of like a cool finish. And that was the first thing I came from. So yeah, if I see anything really cool, like an MMA type fight, I really try to incorporate it, especially from the grappling side. I'm always watching the ADCC and Jiu-Jitsu highlights to see what can I take from, the grappling aspect and bring it in, and really just try to find, anything that makes me different. I would argue to many people that I'm definitely not the most polished professional wrestler, but what makes me different and what makes me unique is just that I'm not a polished professional wrestler. I have that little bit of edge, the edge that looks like I'm a fighter, that looks like maybe he doesn't know what he's doing, but that's because if he messes this up, he's just going to grab a limb and he's going to snap it off.
Absolutely. I think there's something to that. I mean, as a wrestling fan, I've been a wrestling fan for like 40-something years, and I would say I've really begun to enjoy the wrestlers who maybe aren't as polished sometimes. I like it to be a little clunky. Like it looks, I want to suspend disbelief. I like it when it's not too smooth, I guess.
For sure.
Do you study, whether it was for BJJ or whether pro wrestling, obviously for different reasons, but do you ever study tapes? Do you ever look back at old footage? Is that part of the process?
I'm much less of a watch my own tape kind of guy. I'm like an awkward perfectionist that really can never enjoy what I do. That is probably instilled in me from Gargano, because in Johnny's 10 plus year career, however long it's been, when I was training with him, he only told me out of his whole career and probably thousands of matches that he only had 3 that he liked. And the one that he always would bring up to me was him versus Shingo Takagi from 2013 WrestleMania weekend, and which is a phenomenal match. But for a while, I was very similar, man. Like, if I went back and watched my matches, I just dissect them to pick up every even little bit that I don't like to do. So for me, the better tape state for me is to going back and finding stuff, either for an opponent that I'm going to work upcoming, or, from the past. Like, I'm really into watching old shoot style stuff, IWGP, Pro Wrestling Super, things like that, to try to take stuff like that and bring it into the pro wrestling game here in 2020 and really see where we can go from there. And, when I do my tag team stuff with Kevin Koo, usually him and I watch our matches, kind of figure out what we can do, where we can finish ourselves better, things like that.
I heard that Bloodsport was coming back. I saw a tweet the other day. You had been a part of that before, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. Any interest in trying to get on that show? Or?
Yeah, I'd love to be a part of it again. Obviously my last Bloodsport performance wasn't my favorite match ever. I detailed that, out in the public. Phil Garrini was not the easiest guy to work with. While he was a nice guy, he's not the easiest human being to work with. I had discussions about being on Bloodsport on the canceled WrestleMania weekend, so I got to revisit and, kind of ask some other people to hopefully maybe, get on this one. But, if I don't, Paradigm Pro Wrestling, based out of Jeffersonville, Indiana, has been a really kind of driving force in the bringing shoot style wrestling back. We did last November, a full tournament of UWFI style rules, and they're now running UWFI style rules for almost every show. So I've kind of become the ace of that stuff for them, and they're doing a really good kind of shoot style revolution on that stuff. So besides Bloodsport, they're going to be part of WrestleMania, or they're going to be part of the Fox weekend. So I'll be with them on that. So I will be doing a UWFI rules style match, for PPW during Collective Weekend.
Awesome. I had Kid Cash on the show once, and we were talking about his background. He did some boxing and some martial arts, and we were saying that we really feel like, for whatever reason, a lot of the hardcore MMA community, they don't really seem to respect the wrestlers for their toughness. Do you think it's because of the entertainment factor? Do you find that to be the case, or what do you think about that?
I think it's because the word fake gets thrown around in wrestling more than anything. People, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. The one thing fake about wrestling, this is what I tell people when I tell them I'm a wrestler, the only thing fake about it is that, we know what to do, like we know what we're out there doing. I would challenge any human being to go out and take a bump from the referee. That's like, the air come out, feel the air come out of your lungs, that you don't feel any of that stuff hurt. The only thing fake that we can do there is we just know who's winning, we know who's losing, we know where we're get with, the story that we're telling. And realistically, I kind of tell everybody that, and me and actually just Barnett had this conversation at his first sports bet to hear that, realistically, the best MMA fighters at their core are pro wrestlers, and they can promote fights in the way that, they fast track opponents, and the way they can sell the pay-per-view. You see that Conor McGregor, he's just a pro wrestler. You see Jorge Masvidal, that guy's just a pro wrestler. Like, they're just pro wrestlers who don't do our art, they just do it in the MMA sense. So, and it's funny that you find so many hardcore MMA fans that hate guys like Conor McGregor, and they hate guys like Jorge Masvidal. I think it's because they make them think too much of pro wrestling, which they frown upon.
I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. In fact, I always think, like, Ric Flair used to make the comment about the guys that can work and the guys that can be most successful. And I think in MMA, it's almost the same thing. Obviously, it's fighting, but the guys that can fight and have the great finishes and be flashy and talk, they're going to get attention, they're going to get the money, as we see, too.
Yeah, Demetrius Johnson, as you were telling earlier, he's probably one of the greatest players in the generation, top 5 for sure. But he'll never get his just due because he never talked trash, and he just backed up in the cage, but because he didn't talk trash, no one really cared when the flyweights were fighting. So it's a shame because he is an amazing talent. It's a shame because he's versus his greatest competitor. He had to take a fight, but they're not going to, because, he's doing very well for himself to win, but, he was never loved as much as he should have been because he was just too nice of a guy.
No, I agree. Frankie Edgar is another guy, I think, too, that, I think he comes from a different generation, so maybe he gets a little more respect from the older hardcores, but I think there's a guy, who just kind of plows away and, he doesn't get as much shine as say he had ran his mouth, but, yeah, there's a lot of great, and I guess, we could create that again in the pro wrestling. What about, guys from the past like a Brad Armstrong, who maybe was great in the ring, but couldn't cut the best promo, so it's only going to go so far. But.
Absolutely. I'm also honored that, I'm one of those guys that Armstrong in the year 2020 would be at least a top 5 work rate guy in the Indies, or he'd be getting a look from like an AEW or anything like that. Maybe not a main eventer, but he'd be doing pretty well for himself.
I wanted to ask you too, like, before you got into pro wrestling, since you had such an extensive background in BJJ, was there any injuries coming in that were nagging that you had to work around, or any issues like that?
Throughout my entire time being BJJ, I was really never injured. I had one knee injury, like one kind of small knee injury back when I was getting ready for the Chicago Open back, I'm going to say 2014. Otherwise, I was really pretty injury-free, and I definitely felt my life felt better when I was in BJJ, because I wasn't, constantly bumping and constantly traveling, which I am now. But when it comes down to it, like, the only real injury that I've ever really had is, like, I had bad toes on both feet, like, my big toe on both feet is bad. I felt like this cocked turf toe on my right foot. And that comes from that amateur wrestling accident where the wall jumped through a stone wall ball, and I jumped into the wall and my toe was out, so I screwed that up. And then the other one was when I was coaching, I went to do a head-on throw on a kid, and my foot was up, and he slipped in the head-on throw and landed on my foot, and it bent my big toe back so bad that I needed 6 stitches in the webbing of it. But otherwise, injury-free for the most part.
Yeah, that's good. Now, I just want to say, my producer Chris is a big fan of the Between the Sheets podcast, and he said you've been on there a few times. You just a big fan of those guys? Have they just had you on a few times, or is there a relationship?
Yeah, man. So, Chandler was a big proponent to me before his passing about how cool Sheets was, and still one of my things is I'm a nerd. Like, I love wrestling history. I love looking into it. And the first thing part of, like, the first intuition I listened to was they did a sex on the ball for Jordan Green from Shirt Out. And it was so good, and I was so intrigued that I started going back and finding all other shows. And through that, then I started to kind of reach out to Brace and David, and just becoming really tight. And I talked to Brace once every other month or so just about random stuff throughout the landscape. And Chris is one of the coolest guys I've ever talked to. So when I get all of those guys, it's usually you hear the 4 to 6 hours that being on a podcast with them, we just usually for another 2 to 3 hours on top of it. Just I love everything. Like, me and Chris are both big sports fans, so we'll talk about baseball, we'll talk about college football, we'll talk about pro football, and then Bex and I talk about MMA and pro wrestling. So those guys are two of the best guys. If you have a long commute and you want to burn 6 hours, because it's probably one of the most intriguing podcasts you can do, especially if you're into wrestling, mixed martial arts for free.
That's awesome. Now, what's it like working with Filthy Tom? It seems like he's
Filthy Tom's one of the coolest guys, and if you told me when I started pro wrestling, I was going to become, really good friends with Tom Lawler, I would have told you were crazy. But we brought Tom into IW on my recommendation, and then we finished I took off from the airport, and it was just like, two peas in a pod right away. So he was one of the big driving factors behind Jimmy IWGP worked so much. And, from there, we just kind of all went going down. But Tom and I talk daily. We talk about MMA, pro wrestling, we talk about MLW, we talk about Filthy, all that stuff. So he's just one of the coolest guys, very eccentric, but honestly the best guy.
Actually, just before we started talking, I just saw a thing that looks like Mauro Ranallo is possibly parting ways with WWE, and I thought, man, how cool would it be to have his voice, given all his boxing, MMA experience, pro wrestling experience, like an MLW. I hope if he ends up leaving, I think he'd be a great fit with you guys.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Core would look at that for sure. Obviously, when I first came into the company, we had Rich McKee and Tom and Tony Giovanni. Now we have, a pretty good team, TJ Kerr and Rich, but, bringing Mario would be great as well.
Oh, yeah. Now, there's rumors MLW, well, not really rumors. They did a teaser. They're coming back in the fall. They are working on locations, I understand. Anything you can tell us about that?
Well, they did come today, and we're going to do tapings here. I believe in October. They just reached out to us. I don't want to put out any other information, but MLW should be back hopefully mid-October is our hope.
That's so great to hear. We're big fans of MLW. Yo, is there, we'll wrap this up. Is there anything else you want to promote or talk about right now and where people can find you?
Yeah, for social media, you guys can find me at EGreeDC. That's on Twitter and Instagram. I do have one shirt available through the MLW shop. There's also a Team Focus shirt available through MLW shop, so check those out. And then my merchandise itself is available at e3.bigcartel.com. So if you guys want to look at some of my merch, I've got shirts, hats, stickers, backend, all the good stuff on there. So just check that out, guys, and hopefully we can talk again soon sometime.
Awesome. Dom, thank you so much for taking time out to talk. I appreciate it. You're a cool guy. I'm a super big fan of MMA and pro wrestling, so I've been trying to get some MMA stuff on this pod for a while. So thanks for coming in and giving me some of that, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, you as well, man. Thanks. Bye.
Alright, that'll work. We'll loop it. No. Alright, I'm gonna hit the music and then you'll know what's up. Alright everybody, welcome back for another week of the 531 where we take a top 5 list on a particular subject, vote it down to a top 3, and then debate that top 3 down to a number 1. And this week, since there's been so much New Japan talk this week, we're going to do the top 5 IWGP champions. Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I've been actually cranking out some New Japan lately, too. So this is kind of fun for me. I've been going back, watching a few archive matches. I saw Andre the Giant versus Stan Hansen the other day.
I thought that was versus Inoki.
I watched that one, too.
Oh, okay.
I sent you the one Inoki. Yeah, I also did Andre Hansen. Andre didn't have long matches. They're like 12, 13-minute matches.
Yeah, no, you're not going to get a ton out.
No.
But our first list this week we're going to give you is from Jesse from New Hampshire, and he chose Brock Lesnar, Shinsuke Nakamura, Tanahashi, AJ Styles, and Omega.
Interesting Brock made his list. I thought about that, too. Ultimately, I didn't feel like Brock had like that kind of run where it's that long in Japan. But if you look at him as an overall performer, he's definitely, got to be one of the top performers to ever hold that title.
Yeah, definitely. And
adds legitimacy. No matter what you say, Brock adds legitimacy to any belt he holds.
Yep. And I think we're going to see, we're definitely going to see it, is just these lists are going to skew newer. There'll be some older names on there, but I think we're going to see a lot of...
I'm going to mention a name, because maybe he's on yours. I didn't see him on any list. Scott Norton was an interesting guy to me that didn't make anybody's list. Because, I don't know if he held it that long, but he was a big powerhouse, a WCW name. And when I was thinking about, like, former champs, like, his name popped in my head. Not very prestigious, but I was wondering if he'd make this list. I feel like he's in that spot where he's not that popular, though.
Yeah.
And, he's not, he's not that new.
He's going to be like the non-popular Brock Lesnar if he shows up on any list. So who do you got for a first list?
Let's do Randy. Randy got us Okada. He's got us Vader, Nakamura, AJ Styles, and Kenny Omega. So he went pretty new on almost all those guys with the exception, I would say, of Vader. Yeah,
I wish I had put Vader on my list, but it's one of those things. You're kind of picking a handful of champions, and not everybody's going to make it.
Vader had a match I was watching with Hansen, too, where Hansen knocked out Vader's eye.
Yeah,
they
that's
edited
disgusting.
it out there on the English version. They do an English version, too, where Kevin Kelly gives you the insight about it and how Hansen was actually part of All Japan at that time, and it was a super card. And I wasn't aware of all that information, so I thought that was kind of cool.
I believe I have the unedited version of that. Where
I think you do. I think I came to your house one time, and you had it going on, and see Hansen's
gross
eye.
As fuck, or Vader's eye. The next list I got is from Lee Canfield. He has Okada, Tanahashi, Inoki, Vader, and Nakamura. To me, that's by far, I think, the most versatile list. I wanted to put Inoki on my list just for the historical aspect of it.
Was Inoki the IWGP champion? Or
That's what I wasn't sure of. I know, like, Hogan was. I think Hogan beat him early on for it.
But because there was a different version of the belt at one point there.
Yeah, there's been a couple different New Japan belts, but who do you got for your next list?
We got Scott from Voluntown.
Yeah, get off your phone, buddy.
Hey, I was going to try to look this up and find out the information. I want to find out because I bet you Inoki's going to make a few lists here.
Oh, shit, man. You should give me the Iggy.
That's all right. You calmed down on it. Tag team partner here. All right. So, Scott from Voluntown, he did send me a text, set me straight after that stink face comment, which I knew that was coming. I told him. I knew. I was waiting for you.
Playing fast and loose with it. You knew what was up.
You knew what was up. He said, yeah, Dave, you got me. Yeah, triple threat match with Kurt Angle, Triple H, and I forget who else was in that year. I think Steve Austin. And then he said, triple threat TLC match, and Terry and Kat stink face match.
Had to have it as his number one.
Yeah, let's see if Kat makes this list here. We got Tanahashi, Okada, Muda. Give him credit for this one. I haven't seen it a lot of my lists, but Tatsumi Fujinami and Shinji Hashimoto.
Yeah, I was surprised to see Hashimoto, too.
Hashimoto makes a few lists of mine there.
Yeah.
And those who don't know Hashimoto, I remember watching that match. I think it was the Collision in Korea years ago.
Yeah.
I want to say it was against Scott Norton, actually. And Eric Bischoff made the comment that, you don't realize how tough this guy is. He kind of looks like he's your pizza delivery boy. And which I don't know if he does. He just looks like he eats a lot of pizza. But,
yeah. Next list I have is from young Connor Elsey. He's got Okada, Omega, Chono, Tanahashi, and Nakamura. Chono was a good inclusion in there. Another different name. Kind of like Vader and Inoki. We're finally starting to see a little bit of variance in it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Chono making the list. As Eric Bischoff used to call him, Masa My Hero Chono. I was always a fan of Chono. And he used the Mafia kick, if I remember correctly, too. That was one of his favorite holds.
Now, the next list I have is from my brother. He has Okada, Styles, Muda, Nakamura, and Tanahashi. Now, I figured Okada, Nakamura, and Tanahashi would be on multiple people's lists a lot of the times because of the rivalries they had over these titles.
Yeah, they're definitely going to make a lot of lists. There's more lists I got coming. And I do want to say, for the record, Inoki was on that list.
He was on that list.
I think it looks like he might have been the first. But yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. It's tough with the early titles because they had different titles that came in.
It's something like 87, at least he held it. So.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay, so let's go to Jake.
Jake St. John, author, friend of the show.
Yes, and he is a big New Japan fan. That is his organization, as he says. Not AEW, not WWE, not NXT. New Japan. That's my boy. Now, he put down Okada as his top champ. Tanahashi, Tatsuji Fujinami again. Keijo Muto, also known as Muta. And Big Van Vader, Leon White, Baby Bull.
It was good to see Vader get on another list.
Yeah, Vader. He makes one more list of mine, too, coming up. Yeah. Oh, a couple more lists.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got his brother Zach's list, right?
I do. You want me to read that one now? All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Vader ain't making this one, though. But I'll tell you who is. Okada. Here's one I liked. Kensuke Sasaki.
Okay.
Yeah. Also known as the Power Warrior with Road Warrior Hawk. And married Akira Hokuto, former WCW Women's Champion at one point, too.
Okay, wow.
Tatsumi Fujinami, Shinji Hashimoto, and Muto.
I've only got my list left, but I'm going to do Lesnar,
Yep.
Muta, Okada, Tanahashi, and I really like Naito. Like, his current reign I'm happy with, but it was more a couple of years ago when I saw him in New York. He was the IWGP champion when he was doing joint shows with with ROH, and I couldn't get enough of him around that time. So it's good to see him with the title again.
He's not only a tremendous performer, he's a tremendous character. You know what's interesting? You had Lesnar too.
Yes.
What I was wondering is now Kurt Angle had the IWGP title too for me.
Yeah,
I mean, there's another guy who's legitimate and stuff.
He had it. I guess it's just your flavor. Like I probably could have put him. I was thinking of putting Hogan too because. Yeah. Like, to me, Hogan, he's a big deal growing up, sure. And just him being an IWGP champion.
Yeah. I think Bret Hart had a version of the title. It wasn't the IWGP. Like, when I grew up as a kid, I think I read something about it, but it wasn't accurate. I think it's like whatever was another version of that title at one point. Unless he had the junior weight belt. But.
I don't know if he would have had the junior. Owen might have, because Owen did do some wrestling with Tiger Mask.
Oh, I'm very well aware that Owen had a much better deal in Japan. But I thought Bret had that on his titles here. Just going to do a quick little search. Stay with us, fans. I think this will be some fun facts here. We got... Are
you using Wikipedia?
Yeah, I know, but it's a cheap shortcut. If it was listed on here, then...
Cage match, that ain't bad.
Joe giving me shit over here. Yeah.
And magically it'll be like Dave. Dave's like, man, fuck Wikipedia. We might just keep all this in because
why not?
It's fun banter.
Yeah, should we, All right, Bret Hart.
Yeah, that's the bitch of it, is you gotta zoom in for cage match.
Mm-hmm. Where's
titles should be up near the top.
Titles. Shit. I'm not seeing any Japanese titles. I probably read that in one of the old kayfabe mags, like PWI.
Could be, or they could be any number of things.
Yeah. Shame. All right, fuck Brett. Anyway, I will give you AJ's list, actually.
I think we got AJ and you left,
yeah,
or do you have any more?
No, that's it. Me and AJ. All right, I'll do AJ first here. He got the Great Muta, Big Van Vader, Masa Mahiro Chono, Okada, and Tanahashi. So it's interesting where AJ, you notice he put Okada and Tanahashi towards the bottom. AJ more of a fan of, guys like Muta and Vader and that time period.
Yeah.
I am too, but I think it's kind of hard. You can't really discredit what Okada did. And so Okada's number one on my list. Then I went tradition. I went with Muta. Then I went back to Tanahashi. You see, I kind of flip-flopped here a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I finished up with Vader. And I also had to put Hashimoto down because, what an interesting guy. Just a big old belly, stiff kicks.
Yeah,
talking to the mic, baby.
So I'm going to say Okada has to go on. I think he's been on just about everyone.
Yeah, I feel like now it's interesting here, right? Like
everybody's been on almost everyone. So you could have Okada, Tanahashi, Nakamura.
We got Okada. I'm saying this is what I'm noticing a lot. I'm saying Okada, Tanahashi, Muta, and Vader on a lot of lists here too. I have Vader. I'm just looking like right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So we'll do Okada, Tanahashi moving on because they made the most list.
Yes.
And let's do it between Muta and Vader.
Okay.
Both classic
Talk about
picks.
2 different style wrestlers though, right?
Yeah.
Muta with the flying and the strikes, and Vader with just a big old nasty bear, ground and pound.
Yeah.
Knock your eye out.
Well, he had his eye knocked out, actually.
He did. But he'll knock your eye out too.
Oh, he could. He could fuck you up.
Big boy. You're in danger.
Yeah, it's... I mean, it's almost who do you like? Like, I personally would probably just go more with Muta. There's more showmanship.
Yeah. I mean, as a fan, I'm a Vader guy. Like, I like Muta, but Vader, I just like he's one of the greatest super heavyweights of all time. I just love his work, especially early on. So physical, so beat your ass.
Okay, since there's something different, let's put him in with Okada and Tanahashi.
Let's do it. You know what? Yeah, why not? Because we got the other 2 guys. Let's put the Gaijin in there.
So now we're down to a top 3, and we have Okada, Tanahashi, and Vader.
Well, I think this is going to be a classic, right? Vader's got to go, though, when we were talking about these other 2, right? Because
that's true, because Okada and Tanahashi...
They're like the 2 guys, really. They're like the guys that are like kind of like there.
The modern flag bearers.
Tanahashi's the ace, and Okada's the guy who's like setting the records and stuff like that.
Yeah. Nakamura would be like a 3rd on that list.
I think Nakamura would be there. If Nakamura didn't leave to go to WWE to do his thing there, I think we'd be talking about him in the same breath, possibly even more so.
Yeah, almost like the new top 3 of New Japan. So Okada versus Tanahashi as champions. To me, it feels like an open and shut case just with what Okada's done with that title on the recent run. Yeah. And giving it such legitimacy.
Yeah, and he's number 1 on everybody's list, too.
The 2 matches with Omega.
Like, if you look at these lists, like, Okada is number 1 on...
a lot of the lists.
I have 7 of my 8 lists counted me. Okada's number 1 on.
Lee Canfield, my brother, and Kana Elsie mentioned him right off the bat.
Yeah. Actually,
and Tanahashi was
for me, but that's,
okay.
But still, you get it. That's 6 out of 7.
Yeah, Tanahashi was 2nd on Lee's list. He's 4th on Connor's list. And even if this isn't their 1 through 5, first on their mind is Okada.
Most of these guys told me Okada was number 1. Mike Flynn gave me some stuff to put down. Of course, I didn't because we were moving some stuff in a dumpster today. But that's another story. Joe broke a window in my house, but
technically broke 2.
Yeah, I did. That's okay though.
Didn't get the door screwed back on. I mean, we got that couch up the stairs,
and that's all that mattered. And I paid him off for it too. Don't worry about it.
If you guys could have seen getting that couch up the stairs, that was something else. Like
we were bumping our ass off on that couch.
We should have had somebody filming that. That would have been good Patreon material because, I mean, unrelated to these lists, we launched a Patreon this week.
We're just trying to think of some material and some stuff. So
actually,
let's get
done with this list and let's do a little bonus after this. So Okada won this, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Okada.
Sorry, Tanahashi.
Okada's.
You ain't my ace.
Okada's clearly the winner.
Not my president. Not my ace.
So I mean, none of these were really bad picks, but I think just based on what Okada did with that modern run, really puts him at the top.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get more Naito and AJ Styles.
Yeah, I mean, even Kurt Angle for that matter. Yeah. But I mean, I think that was during his fucked up period, and it happened during TNA.
He had it the same time around Lesnar did. I think it's just more crazy that Lesnar held that belt.
Yeah,
because Lesnar pretty much is just a WWE guy.
And I mean, Dave, you know what that music means. You can find us at Fans Working on Twitter, Working Fans Wrestling Pod at gmail.com, Working Fans Podcast Facebook page. And you'll hear us talk about it. We got a Patreon.
God!
Patreon.com/WorkingFansPod. So you know where to find us. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, workingfanswrestling_pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.